Bengals fans, something interesting is starting to build around Cincinnati right now. And this isn't one of those quiet little rumors that disappears after a day or two. There are multiple names being connected to the Bengals, major names, impact players, and when you start hearing the words all in repeatedly around this team, people start paying attention. But here's the question nobody can ignore. Are these realistic moves? Or are we entering dangerous territory where excitement starts colliding with financial reality? Because while the headlines sound exciting, there's a much bigger story developing underneath all of this. Before we go any further, if you're a Bengals fan that wants updates the moment things change around this team, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The NFL moves fast, rumors change by the hour, and if Cincinnati decides to make another major move, you do not want to miss it. Now, let's get to what matters. The biggest name floating around right now is Josh Sweat. And Bengals fans, this is not some random player being casually linked to Cincinnati. According to the discussion surrounding league trade possibilities, Cincinnati has been listed among teams that could potentially be involved in pursuing him. And that's where things immediately become interesting, because Josh Sweat isn't being described as just another rotational player or depth piece. Right now, the conversation surrounding him paints him as arguably one of the hottest trade names available. Multiple teams are believed to have interest, and that's because you're talking about a player who has been highly productive and carries immediate impact potential. The situation itself appears complicated. The discussion points toward Josh Sweat being unhappy in Arizona, and this isn't something that supposedly started yesterday. Trade rumors surrounding him were already circulating before the draft process. Then came additional conversation surrounding voluntary OTAs and questions around his situation. Again, nobody is treating voluntary workouts like a full-blown crisis. But when rumors already existed beforehand, people naturally begin connecting dots. Now imagine this from Cincinnati's perspective. You're looking at a player who, according to the discussion in the file, would immediately elevate the edge room. The comparison made was simple. If Sweat arrived, he'd instantly become the Bengals' most productive edge presence, based on what's being discussed. That's a massive statement. And Bengals fans know exactly why this creates excitement. Everybody talks about getting after quarterbacks. Everybody talks about pressure. Everybody talks about disrupting opposing offenses. So naturally, hearing a player of this level connected to Cincinnati gets people talking immediately. But then, reality enters the room. Because making trades in the NFL isn't fantasy football. The reported discussion around trade value suggested a conditional 2027 fourth-round selection that could potentially become a third-round pick, depending on outcomes. On the surface, some fans could look at that and say, wait a minute, that's not outrageous. But then you remember something else. The contract. Because according to the information discussed, Josh Sweat still has 3 years and approximately $54 million remaining. Suddenly, that conditional draft compensation doesn't feel like the whole story anymore. Now you're talking about major financial considerations. Now you're talking about cap management. Now you're talking about balancing a roster. Now you're talking about decisions that affect multiple seasons. And that's where things become difficult for Cincinnati. The conversation around the Bengals' financial situation became impossible to ignore. Because while the excitement around adding another impact player sounds great, the reality presented was that Cincinnati's current cap picture creates real challenges. The Bengals reportedly sit at just over $7 million in available cap space and rank near the bottom of the league in that category. Think about that for a second. A little over $7 million. Now compare that against potentially taking on major contracts. Suddenly, every rumor starts getting filtered through one major question. How exactly does Cincinnati create room? And that's where another important topic emerged. Joe Burrow. Not because of his play, not because of performance, not because of football reasons, because of contract structure. The discussion explained that if a Burrow restructuring happened, Cincinnati could potentially create more than $19 million in cap flexibility. That changes everything. Suddenly, conversations around trades become very different. Suddenly, additional signings become possible. Suddenly, front office decisions become more aggressive. But here's the part that Bengals fans need to pay attention to. According to the reports discussed, there have not been talks regarding a restructuring at this point in time. That is huge, because while players generally benefit from restructuring situations due to guaranteed money considerations, the bigger decision sits with the organization itself and the long-term financial consequences attached to it. So now, all of a sudden, Josh Sweat isn't simply a football discussion. It's a financial discussion. It's a long-term planning discussion. It's a risk discussion. It's an organizational philosophy discussion. And then another name entered the conversation, Jordan Brooks. Now, Bengals fans may react differently to this one because the proposal discussed here gets expensive quickly. The information presented described Brooks as a player who led the league with 183 total tackles and earned first-team All-Pro recognition. That's elite production. No debate there. The proposed scenario discussed involved Cincinnati potentially giving up a 2027 second-round selection and a 2028 fourth-round selection. And immediately, the conversation became divided. Because yes, you're potentially adding one of football's top linebackers, but you're also discussing a player with 1 year left on his deal. 1 year. That's where people start asking difficult questions. Is that price worth paying? Do you sacrifice major draft resources? Do you go even further into aggressive roster building? How far is too far? Because the conversation repeatedly returned to one phrase: all in. And Bengals fans have probably noticed something. There appears to be a balancing act happening. On one side, go chase impact players, improve the defense, strengthen weaknesses, push for immediate results. On the other side, protect future flexibility, avoid financial trouble, manage cap space, protect long-term assets. That's the tension sitting underneath every rumor. And maybe that's the biggest story here. Not Josh Sweat, not Jordan Brooks, not even the trade packages themselves. The biggest story might actually be Cincinnati standing at a crossroads where every major move now creates ripple effects that stretch years into the future. Because if restructuring happens, everything changes. If it doesn't happen, suddenly many of these rumors become far harder to execute. And that's where Bengals fans become divided. Some fans will say, push every chip into the middle. Others will say the team has already been aggressive enough. Some will look at Josh Sweat and immediately say yes. Others will see the contract and hesitate. Some will love Jordan Brooks. Others will look at 1 year remaining and question the price. Now, I want to hear from every Bengals fan watching this. If you had to choose right now, are you making the move for Josh Sweat? Are you making the move for Jordan Brooks? Or are you standing pat with what Cincinnati already has? Drop your thoughts below. If you're a real Bengals fan, now it's your turn to jump into the conversation. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Would you trade for Josh Sweat? Make a move for Jordan Brooks? Or keep things exactly the way they are? I want to know what move you would make if you were running the front office today. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because if anything breaks around Cincinnati, you'll hear it here first. Who Dey?